Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Crapper with myself, Tim Appleton, and my good friend, Peter Turner. Greet the people, Peter.
Hello, all the way from England.
All the way from England, and I'm all the way from Spain. Um, now, today we're going to be fulfilling perhaps the classic rock part of our brief. We've been doing various prog albums recently, and we're going to do something slightly different today. We're going to do a sort of classic album. Now we did our top 10 US bands of all time episode. You can check that out if you're at all interested. And a couple of us, specifically Peter and myself, had Simon and Garfunkel fairly near the top. And then the third participant, our friend Sean Hall, confessed that he would have included Simon and Garfunkel if he'd thought that they could be described as a band,
Yeah.
rather than just a duo. So obviously, all of us have a lot of time for Simon and Garfunkel as a sort of a definitive kind of US act, and so. Today we're going to look at a Simon and Garfunkel album. I mean, for my money, one of the best. We're going to be discussing Bookends, which is from... actually, I've got very little empirical information here. 1968, I think it came out.
68, yeah.
Yes, it's on Columbia. Was it Columbia? I'm going to say... I'm going to guess Columbia.
CBS, yeah.
CBS,
Columbia, Columbia, yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. Now... what do you think of? How do you appraise this album as a whole, Peter? Where do you think it stands?
I have to say, it's an album I'm very familiar with, but it took me to really listen through it to sort of realise its sort of placement in their 5 albums. I think what it really was doing, and actually it was much cleverer than I thought because. I hadn't really thought of it as being like a concept album. I don't know how that had passed me by, but I hadn't really somehow. And I realised, you've got 2 parts to this album, really. A concept followed by some other sort of bits that were left over, really, I suppose. I have to say, I do think it's a good album, probably their best. Bridge Over Troubled Water, I think, is more known than this, their sort of final album. But yeah, I do think it's a good album. It just took me another go at it to really realise that, though, I think. It's this folk rock thing as it's moving from one phase to another. That's always an awkward time for bands, isn't it? That kind of transitional thing they were doing at this point, at this time. But I'm sure we'll talk about that, a bit later on.
That's right. I mean, actually, I remember you talking about that in the other episode. You were saying that they did a sort of, there was a lot of, they were very transitional, Simon and Garfunkel, in themselves. Like every album, they did 5 albums, as you said, and this is the 4th one. But each album was album was a big sort of change in relation to the previous one. In fact, sort of almost culturally. And I think this is a culturally significant album, isn't it? What's that thing they always say is it on Wikipedia, where they say this has been included in the Library of Congress for its cultural significance?
That's right.
Not saying whether it's a good album or not, but it's culturally significant.
Yeah.
And there is a cultural element to Simon and Garfunkel's milestone albums, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they never did a bad album. I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I think it's one of the most solid catalogues, I think, in the history of rock, again, which was something that we talked about before. I think that this is probably their best. I prefer it to Bridge Over Troubled Water, because I think Bridge Over Troubled Water has got some great tracks, but it's got some, for my money, it's got some... tiny bit of filler on it, and this is all killer, as they say. What I was going to say was about you said it's a concept album. Do you think that just applies to the first side or the second side, or both?
The first side. The stuff on side 2 is stuff that they wrote for The Graduate or old singles, apparently. So it's a bit of a gathering up of stuff. But I think the album really is the first side. That is Bookends, isn't it? The rest of it, It's kind of put together, really. I think we've had albums we've discussed before that are like this, aren't we? Aren't they? But just the first side, you can see the point of it. I think 2112 was a good example, the Rush album. You can see the point of side one. Side two is just piecing stuff together, because there's two sides to an album. Not necessarily that it's not good, because there's lots of it I do like, but it's really the bookends thing. That's the breakthrough part, I think.
That's right. Yeah. Sort of the atom heart mother syndrome. Yeah. So, but I think that I would say that there is a sort of continuity between the first and second sides, even though the first side is a suite. But I think the themes that come up in the first side, I think, are also sort of referred to again in the second side. So I think that there is a sort of, I would say that there is a sort of totality to this album, even though, as you say, there is a difference between side one and side two.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a life cycle, isn't it? Side one. So you've got, I've noted it down, you've got a suicidal child.
Great way to start.
Eloping lovers, and then you've got the end of a relationship, and then you've got being in an old people's home, and then you seem to have death, basically. And so, I mean, I don't know. It reminded me of the Seven Ages of Man, actually, which is the now you're a Shakespeare guy. As You Like It.
Yeah,
is that right?
So Jaques in As You Like It. It's all the world's a stage is the speech. Yeah, he's a melancholy was very big back in Shakespeare's time. It's a start of the sort of understanding that humans are deeper than just what makes them physically, beyond God, really. I think, and he talks about everything's like this stage. We all go through these patterns. And that's a bit like Bookends, I suppose, is a modern example of that.
That's right. It's a classical theme, isn't it? This the kind of like the life cycle.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to read it, but maybe we'll come back to that. We could maybe do that towards the end. I don't know. Yeah. And so it's a really, I would say, like an existential premise here, really. And I think this is quite important. The existential thing is being like basically death. Life leading to death, which is a kind of existential motif. And I think that because like the existentialists followed Heidegger in the idea that death is what gives meaning to life, basically. And if you don't have the fact that you're going to die clear in your head, then you're not going to be able to do anything reasonable with your life.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that I think that's out of keeping with the period. This is the last thing I want to say really on the album as a whole. I think it's out of keeping with the period. And I wondered what you thought about that, because I was thinking this album makes me think a little bit of the Kinks. You remember that the Kinks were not allowed to go to America. They got excluded from the party, didn't they?
Yes.
For breaking union rules or something like that.
Yeah.
So they had to stay in London. And so famously, this affected their whole career. And Ray Davies spent the rest of his time just like writing kind of slightly depressive albums about being trapped in the London weather or whatever it was. And so that's always seen as like perhaps a reason that the Kinks were not as successful or popular as some of the other British beat groups, because they, British invasion bands, because they were sort of their music was out of keeping with the sort of euphoria and optimism of the period, right?
Yeah.
And I think that applies here. I don't know if you would agree with that. This is a very anti...
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think what it is something built into, well, specifically Paul Simon, which is he's quite he writes fairly dark material, actually. I mean, right from The Sound of Silence first album, and then For Emily, and these kind of, they're quite patterns, songs like that. They're quite dark, actually, and they're into sort of poetry, aren't they? And they're sort of reading around that, and so everything's a bit sort of sort of has a darker edge, I think, because it's all sort of doom laden almost. And I think you get that on this album, don't you? There's this kind of darker side to things. There is,
That's right.
although there is incredible light sides as well. Things that are just beyond. I mean, we'll talk about this in a bit, but things that are like really uplifting. But the themes are often quite dark. Actually, I don't know if there's many light themes.
They are,
but.
So I mean, I think that this is a sort of like I would say perhaps an anti-Summer of Love album. I mean, this is just it's slightly late, but it's like we're reflecting on this period, and it's like this is a real contrast as you said, it's got a literary element as well, which we could also perhaps
Yeah.
come back to. But it's a real contrast with the sort of optimism of the previous year.
I think also it was a late album. I don't think it was supposed to come out this late. I read that Paul Simon had essentially got writer's block, and what happened was he couldn't progress with the album. So another Simon was brought in apparently to help produce. John Simon, no relation, was brought in to sort of move things along, and I think that's why it came out early '68. But it was supposed to come out earlier, I think, than earlier than that, in late '67 maybe.
Yes,
So that may have been part of the reason.
that's right. Well, writer's block is a form of depression, isn't it? So, I mean, maybe this is like influencing the theme of the album a bit,
Yeah.
So that's a good point. I mean, maybe this takes us to the cover.
Yes,
Because, have you got it there?
I've got it.
Yeah, this has been good for the podcast listeners.
There it
Peter is now holding up a copy of the Peter is now holding up a copy of the album. Now, black and white, that cover.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on? No, Jake. No, okay. So apart from that, I mean, I think that again, I think this is in keeping with the theme, isn't it? It's monochrome. It's not colourful, which is it was a colourful period, wasn't it? The hippie period, and so they've gone completely in the opposite direction. They're actually wearing sort of beatnik clothes, which is pre hippie, right?
Yeah.
So this is another anti-hippie motif. Existentialist, because I mean they've got the existentialist haircuts and all that. And they also look. I think you were saying it has these quite literary. I mean, they look like typical sort of New York Jewish intellectuals of the period, don't they? Bookish intellectuals of the period, or maybe slightly before. And that comes up a lot in the album. They mention the New York Times at one point, and of course the New York City Zoo.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not Big Brother and the Holding Company, is it? It's the exact opposite of that. That's why I'm always amazed when I see like the Monterey Pop film. They're so different because they're there, and it's like people love them. But my God, are they at odds? They just write these incredible songs, don't they? But they're in no way in keeping with the vibe at all,
That's right. And they are using a lot of jazz chords, which is, I suppose, a New York thing as well. I don't know, because it's big in New York, isn't it, jazz? And I think that kind of the jazz club, existentialist jazz club sort of culture.
What I realise is, which I think is reflected on the front cover, but probably not deliberately, which is this album is very much like Paul Simon's vocals. So what I noticed when you look at Bridge Over Troubled Water, and I had to check through the titles, there's a lot more Art Garfunkel on that album. This is basically Paul Simon singing, and I wonder whether the front cover kind of reflects that, because when you actually look carefully, Paul Simon's at the front, but he's also the only one in focus. Actually, Art Garfunkel is like a backing singer almost, and he's slightly out of focus on the front cover. Like there's a slight difference in sort of intensity between them. That it's really like it's Paul Simon's album. That's
interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. Yeah, because it's very monological, a lot of this album, isn't it? It's not just his writing. He's sort of speaking in his own voice, and then Art Garfunkel seems to play a sort of secondary role, even in the dialogues,
Yeah. I think in a way Art Garfunkel always played that secondary role. It's just that I hadn't noticed how much of this was Paul Simon singing until I really listened to it. I thought, actually, he's pretty much doing everything on this album.
That's right.
It wouldn't be the same without Art, obviously, but, you
could
just
probably
noticed it.
You could probably put it down now if you like.
Yeah, and also the lettering is so like, like, I don't know what they call it, aerial or something now. It's very, very unflowery. Incredibly
yes,
like library-like.
That's right. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Monterey there, because I also wonder whether we can come back to this, but I wonder whether this is the sort of New York versus LA thing, because they're New Yorkers, aren't they? Or I think maybe Paul Simon's from New Jersey. I don't know, but like but
Paul Simon went to California eventually, didn't he? But they're very much like East Coast.
He did in Annie Hall.
Well, I think that's actually where he ended up anyway.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's just that I wonder whether there's a sort of, as I said, to go with the anti-hippie motif, I wonder whether there's a sort of slight anti-LA, kind of internal domestic politics thing here.
Could be.
Anyway,
they do have that kind of rivalry, don't they?
I think so, yeah. It's two sort of major cultural centres, aren't
Yeah,
they? East Coast and West Coast. Anyway,
yeah.
look at us talking so freely about issues we barely understand. Um, all right, good. Well, look, let's go to the track, shall we? Let's get on with it.
Mm,
Now, side one, as we've said, is a suite. It's all. I noticed it's all in sort of six. Do you notice that it's
right.
all in 6/8? Side one, side two is all in basically mostly in 4/4. Side two being the
Oh,
singles side. So I think that that's like a sort of very pedantic thing to point out. But it's. I wonder, singles have to be in 4/4 frequently in order to be
right.
up
Sell.
exciting, whereas 6/8 is a more reflective sort of
Right.
time signature. I think
Yeah.
it's like I sound like what's his name from Spinal Tap. I always think D minor is the saddest key.
Nigel Tufnell.
That's right, yeah. So we begin with the bookends theme anyway. Peter, what's your opinion of this 30-second song?
Yeah. It's obviously that this was it's sort of the melodies obviously come off this. I think this is classic playing around on a guitar, isn't it, and coming up with something. It's the sort of thing guitarists would do. They'd come up with that and think, oh, we could put some words to that. So in order to make the thing work, they put it at the start and then blend it into the next track. I think it's a clever little guitar riff. It's nice to hear an acoustic sort of piece, because around the time there's a lot of sort of rock and sort of acid rock and stuff. So it's nice to hear that, and I think it's perfect for a lyrical melody, to go on top. Which is later revealed, so it's kind of sets up the album really nicely, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. So later on, it comes back at the end
Yeah,
of the suite with vocals. So it's sort of this is like a prelude, isn't it? Which is always a nice way,
the
to
bookend,
yeah, the bookend, the first bookend.
first bookend.
It's melancholy
Yeah,
again. So once again, sort of out of step with the euphoria
yeah,
of the period. I think it's very pretty
yeah.
sounding, which is an important component of the Simon and Garfunkel sound, isn't it? Don't you think? It
Very.
sounds weird to say it, but
It is.
prettiness is one of their things.
Yeah,
And I've written almost has a baroque feel. This
yeah.
perhaps in more than one sense. All right, good. Well, let's get into the first actual track. Once you've got through that little prelude, then the first sort of main like big track crashes in, called "Save the Life of My Child." Now, what are your feelings on this one?
I think it's a really odd way to start an album, I have to say, because first of all, because of the crashing in. It comes in, doesn't it, quite violently, and also the theme. This is a song about a teenage suicide or attempted suicide, but there's lots of bits that sort of remind me of other things in here as well. So I think it's an unusual way to start the album. The other thing is that it's what you realise is you're in a different sound world, because if you go back to Sound of Silence, you've sort of the album. The one before this, you've given in to the fact that the producers have got to them. This is no longer Simon and Garfunkel, is it? This is them plus, skiffle drums and bass and, a little harmonium or something. That's gone. The prissy days are gone. We're into like folk rock here, but this is like really experimenting with things, isn't it? A bit like the Beatles, which is, oh, we could have this. Why don't we have a car going past? I mean, imagine at the time discovering that you can do all this stuff. I mean, it's really hard to temper it, and I think in a way that's why this suffers a bit from that, which is this is them experimenting and going, this sounds great, doesn't it, put it in.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Penny Lane slightly, this, because it's a cast of characters. You've got people coming in of you like a painting. You've got this scene with this boy, and then these other characters sort of come on as well. You've got the drug reference in there as well. You must be high on something, someone said, So that's kind of crept in as well. They're kind of cheeky across the whole album with these little bits they put in about people and what's going on around, I think. And that's one of them. Harold the Barrel, it reminds me slightly of, obviously, the nursery crime song from Genesis. And it has the supernatural kind of ending, actually, which is, with Gabriel, flying away or whatever. This is what happens. Sorry, take a running jump, and this is he actually flies off at the end. I think, doesn't he? He flew away. This boy.
Yes.
How else can you resolve this? But he disappears. But there's a lot of sound effects on this, and I just think it must have felt clever at the time. I find it a bit jarring. It's all right, the song, but I don't mind the melody. but I just think there's a lot of stuff going on that probably isn't needed.
Interesting. Can I? Do you think that Harold the Bower by Genesis is partly influenced by this track then? Because this is.
Oh yeah, of course I'm thinking of it the other way round, aren't I?
Well, yeah. Well, no, but
Yeah.
I think you might
It
be right.
reminds
They
it
might.
reminds me of Harold the Barrel, which is later on, 4 years later or whatever.
That's right, but it didn't. That's right. It didn't remind them of Harold the Barrel at the time before they'd written Harold the Barrel. um,
No.
but yeah, you're right. I wonder whether Harold the Barrel is a sort of reference to this. Of course, this is one in a long series of pie-ins to suicide done by rock bands.
Well,
Harold the
it
Barrel.
does, but it
We've
has
got.
two elements, doesn't it? Which is the disappearance at the end, and also the boy with everyone around saying "Don't jump" and all this stuff. This is quite similar to Harold the Barrel, isn't it?
That's right. I tell you what, you could play a lot of things for comedy back then that you couldn't perhaps do now.
Yeah,
We have to be more sensitive to things. There was a,
yeah,
there's also, I was thinking of, what was I saying, Pie-ins to Suicide. So you've got Howard the Bow, you've got this, Save the Life of My Child, and then you've got, there's a song by Godley and Cream called This
yeah.
Sporting Life off their
Right,
album L, which is just about, there's a whole scene where they're saying, take into account the audience if you're going to go, make it spectacular. It's sort of really distasteful
yeah, 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 yeah.
sort of theme. But yeah, by the way, you said sound. I don't know if I misheard you, but you said Sound of Silence, the previous album. Of course, the previous album was Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme.
Oh, right,
Sound of
okay,
Silence was before that. But
right.
what I was going to say was that sound. Did you notice there's a reference to self-satirical reference to Sound of Silence in the middle of this song? Did
Oh,
you
go
notice
on. What
it?
is it?
Well, they start they. You're saying that they mix a lot of sounds together. Well, one of the
Yeah,
sounds you might not have heard it, but one of the
right,
sound I read about it and then I re-listened to it. There's a bit in the middle where they go, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." They put that line in. They
right.
lay it over the top in the middle because, as you say, it's a sort of like sound collage. This piece, isn't it?
Yes, there's a lot going on. I think it's like it's one of those albums. If you remastering does a really good job on this album. It's an album that
Yeah.
needs to be remastered.
I
Yeah,
think I think you're right. It's surprising that it hasn't been. I mean, they're sort of. Funny thing is about Simon and Garfunkel, even though we really rate them, is
yeah.
they're sort of curiously underrated, even though they're kind of brilliant. They haven't had all those sort of. Like reissues and stuff like a
No,
lot of '60s bands have had. But anyway, that's another story.
there's
Um,
another moan.
yeah. So I think that yeah, you're right. I agree with you. This is not my favorite track on the album. I don't like this sort of. They're using a Moog synth. I think the synth
Yeah,
crashes in at the beginning, doesn't
really.
it?
Yeah.
It's sort of so it's ahead of its time, I suppose, but it's kind of disgustingly ahead of its time. Supposed to sound again very urban, isn't it? Maybe that's why. Could be another reference to New York. I've written there.
Yes.
And again, this is an up tempo number. This time in fast, sort of 6/8. I think that this is not so hard. I think the lyrics on this are kind of great, even though they're slightly
Yeah.
dark, slightly mordant. I think but I like the sort of obliqueness and the humour. I think that his lyric writing got much better. I don't know what you think about that. When he started off, I think a lot of his early metaphors were quite clumsy.
Yeah.
And then, I Am a Rock, The Sound of Silence things. I think it's all a bit sort of Emily Dickinson, I suppose. But by this point, I think he's much more. The words are much more interesting. And I was just going to
I
say that I think the words
yeah.
make this
I think you're
track
right.
really.
I think you're right. I think things like "I Am a Rock," "Sound of Silence." You see, he was from a sort of poetry perspective coming up with these ideas, but this is almost pre-Dylan stuff, and I think the Dylan effect has taken place, which
Yeah.
went right across the board. Which is it's anything goes, and here we go. No Dylan, no Strawberry Fields. Penny Lane doesn't exist as a song without that kind of insight into words, and I think that's what's happened, isn't it? Is it's kind of that's what he's chasing at that time. More
Yeah,
about Dylan later.
right. Well, yeah. So I was going to say, what else was I going to say? Yes. So it's urban, a bit like Penny Lane, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, the lyrics make this track really, and it doesn't ruin it. It doesn't spoil the album because I think it's
Yeah.
such gems,
Yeah.
are on their way that it doesn't really matter. But I think that this is harmonically not a very interesting track. It's in G, and then it goes up to it has a key change for the chorus. It goes up to C for the chorus, but I don't really know why. It's a sort of redundant key change. I think,
Right.
because he's trying to do interesting things harmonically on this album.
Hmm.
But as I was sort of discussing with Sean in the last episode, I think doing something unusual is not necessarily doing something interesting, And this is unusual that there's a key change in it, but it's not a particularly interesting key change. So I think that this song doesn't quite
Yeah.
add much
And
to
I
the
think a lot of
album.
people mistake that in
Yeah,
music generally. They oh, that's very interesting, but it doesn't make it good music. No, throwing lots of things at the wall doesn't necessarily.
that's right.
I mean, a really good example is on the very first album, the Paul Simon Songbook. A Church Is Burning. Now that's a brilliant. I mean, that's such a good song, but it's so simple.
Right.
But what a classic that is. And you don't
Yeah.
have to add anything to that. It's just a melody that's waiting to be written, and that's just an
That's right.
example of a plainly good song, I think.
But I think throwing a lot of things at the wall to see what sticks, I think is probably quite a good description of that opening track, really. Anyway, so maybe on that note, we can move on.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on to America, track 3, which I think this is a stone cold classic. This one, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
this is a sort of this was a hit later on. I think they didn't release it as a single at the time, but I think this is one of the 3 big sort of like watermark songs on the
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
The other 2 being Mrs. Robinson and Whiter Shade of Pale. I mean, this is one of the 3 big hits on the album, I think.
Hazy Shade of Winter.
Sorry, Hazy Shade of Winter. What did I say?
Whiter Shade of Pale.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, that's right. A Hazy Shade of Pale. So, yeah, I think this is a great tune. And it's an original arrangement, particularly Garfunkel's harmonies, which are really interesting here. I don't know if you picked up on that. They're very sort of folky harmonies in the sense that they're very unusual. He's using sort of, it's not just simple harmonizing in thirds.
No, no.
And there's sort of counterpoints and things. And the harmonic structure is really interesting. Again, it's sort of changing key, but here it's more. Again, it's sort of unusual and it's really interesting this time. It's like the unusualness is kind of interesting. It works here, I think. There's constant changes of key here, which I think are, as I say, counterintuitive. They work perfectly. I mean, I think it's so complex harmonically that it's almost through composed, this track. There's no point at which it actually repeats any sort of blocking, as it were. But also, the other thing I wanted to say about it, I'll let you come in a minute, is I think this is a really great theme. This is a real lyrical achievement here. We were talking about how his words had improved. The words are brilliant here. It's a young couple sort of eloping, but they're disillusioned before they even get off the bus. Which I think again. The idea of a sort of broken dream, it represents a sort of pessimism, which again doesn't quite fit with the era. I wondered if the bus thing was a reference to The Graduate,
Right.
because there's a lot of. It's sometimes difficult to distinguish the writing of this album from the writing of the soundtrack for the Graduate.
Yeah.
But also, I wanted to say that this idea about what does America mean, I think, is really interesting. This is an extremely philosophical song, and it sort of begins with like an ontological paradox, really, so to speak, because it's like, how can you search for something that you're already in?
Yeah.
And it reminded me a bit of that. There's something similar in that. There's a Johnny Cash song where he says. Till then I'll be what I am, a solitary man. And so it's this paradox of like a temporal loop. So he's trying to, like, he's going to turn into something that he already is, and so I think that's kind of an interesting motif. And it's also, I think here America functions as in another paradoxical sense, as what Kant calls a regulative ideal, like something that you need, but you can't ever reach it, because America as an idea is kind of impossible, but it might also be a necessary, ideal, even though you can never reach it. So I think it's it's sort of what they call an empty signifier. The linguists call an empty signifier America here. We don't know, we're not quite sure what it is, but it has an ordering function. And I was thinking, it wasn't an accident that Bernie Sanders used this in his presidential or his primary campaign a few years ago. You know, because like we're all searching for America. Because I think in this sense, America has also a political
Yes.
connotation. It's like it represents sort of like the sort of forlorn hope of all humanity. You know, so I
Yeah.
think it's kind of well chosen, which America has always represented. Really, you know, let's be
Yeah.
honest. Um,
Yeah, that's sort of
so
unchanging. Yeah.
yeah, so sorry, I've gone on a bit there, but what do you think about this one?
Well, in the, I mean, we're talking about the Beat Generation, and they're sort of growing out of that. And Beat Generation has a lot actually to do with what they sort of stand for, I think, which is the kind of philosophical, sort of almost Buddhist approach to everything. And I think that there's a quote in On the Road, Jack Kerouac's On the Road, where Dean Moriarty says something like, we're going to look for the real America. They're going on a road trip and they want to find America. What is America? We're here. What is it? And I think that's like this song, isn't it? Put into, that's his words put into sort of effect, really, I think. I mean, above all, this is just an absolutely brilliant song. I mean, it's so good. When you hear those notes come in at the start, that harmony, what a clever little harmony that is. That drifting in. And yeah, you're right. They don't do the natural thirds thing, which doesn't always work anyway, but it is basically what, pop music does. They really think about how they overlap things, where Art Garfunkel sits, high up, where, low down, where he's coming in. All that stuff is very cleverly done, I think. It's just a brilliant blend of melody and lyric, this. It's also just, you can have a great song, but what this gives you is something so cinematic. This isn't throwaway. This isn't just a good pop song. It's got this cinematic view, isn't it? Which is, it's a story that we actually want to follow. And I don't think you realise, how embedded you are in this until you really listen to it. You really are in this little mini film, aren't you, that they're making here. So it captures the generation really well. I think the sort of disillusionment of everything. And of course, Vietnam is, raging at the time as well. Searching for the America that they want, rather than the America that actually exists. This is searching for something, but they don't really know what it is they're searching for, but they want something, but it's not necessarily what's out there. So there's a whole darkness to the feel of this song as well. It's not an uplifting song. However, there is a moment of great joy, of course, which is the laughing on the bus moment, which, playing games with the faces. You said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful, his bow tie is really a camera. Now, that is a really nice example of Paul Simon and that, the way the lyrics flow over the bar lines, and they don't really seem to fit exactly the sort of structure of it, but the lyrics come first almost. And he did that a lot. When he went solo, there was a lot of that. And he'll just sort of fit the lyrics on. So it has this uniqueness about it. There's nothing penned in about this song. It does exactly what it wants to do. It tells you the story. It's beautifully cinematic, and it's just such a good melody. I mean, it's really the highlight of the album for me, I think.
Right, that's interesting. This is your favourite song, is it?
I think it's the best song on the album. I think, if they had to pick one, I'd say that this was it. I do like a lot of the others, but I think maybe this is the best they did on this album.
I think you might be right. It's not one of their more famous songs, is it?
No.
Interestingly.
No.
But you're right. I mean, you could probably make the case that this is the greatest, perhaps Simon and Garfunkel song ever. By the way, a couple of little minor details. Kathy, I'm lost, I said, though I knew she was sleeping. The story, as you said, cinematic story goes very fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, that's a reference to Kathy from Essex. Is that right? Where we're from?
Yes.
Basically.
Kathy's song.
Yeah, Kathy's song, yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
It's funny, it keeps coming up. It's like it's a sort of various iterations of like various references to Kathy throughout his career. She, almost like what is it called? Frank Zappa calls it conceptual continuity. He's still talking about the same girl he's hung up on.
Yeah, and it is spelt the same. Sorry, they spell it with a K. Kathy's always spelt with a K. I thought for a moment it was a C, but yeah, it is actually a K, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be a K. Kathy with a K from Essex, from Romford or wherever. So yeah, and the other thing I was going to say, the Yes version of this is also brilliant.
Yes,
completely different, And it's a really interesting example of how you can take an amazing song and do something completely different with it, which is also amazing. But anyway,
Yeah, it's almost like not a cover, that, isn't it?
that's
You
right.
could perfectly not know, you could not know Simon and Garfunkel and think that's a great Yes song. You wouldn't even know. There's no real adherence to the melody or anything, is there?
That's right. That's right. Now, listen. Unless you've got anything else to say on that, let's move on to Overs. The following track. I thought it was interesting that you said that his lines stretch over the bars, so it's not specifically rhyming sometimes.
He's quite free with his words, isn't he?
It's ironic because he later did an album called "There Goes Rhyming Simon," which I wonder whether there's a sort of ironic self-reference,
Yeah.
because you're right, he does this a lot, and I hadn't thought about that with America. But what I was going to say was that's definitely true with this song, Overs.
Right, yeah.
First of all, is this a reference to cricket? Because there's so many English references on this record. I wondered whether
What? In the States in the 60s, very much doubt it.
he might have known something about cricket. They were cricket overs, But anyway, that's just a sort of passing thought. But yeah, this song is so this song is a paean to the end of a relationship, isn't it? And it's almost like a one-sided conversation. I mean, I suppose you'd call that a monologue, really. Up to the point of actually sort of him lighting a cigarette at the beginning, which is very nice. Jazzy chords again, very jazzy chords again. New York. This is where he mentions the New York Times. But the interesting thing here is that there's a lot of obliqueness, lines that don't rhyme, lines that don't finish. Harmony is sort of just hinted at. The chords are very complex and subtle, and almost sometimes vanishing down to one note. And I think that that relates to what you were saying about America, that he's not always rhyming, and I think he does it on purpose. And but here I think it has a more specific programmatic function, because I think the speaker is sort of trying to tease out a set of half-formed thoughts, isn't he? Because he's kind of addressing a partner. And then, of course, the half-formed thoughts are sort of interrupted, at various points. It's almost like I was going to say a monologue, but it's like a dialogue he's having with himself in his head, You're not even really sure whether the other person is there. Although, again, Art Garfunkel comes in the middle, sounding like an angel, as usual.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether he was actually the girl in this, like whether he sings the girl's part, because otherwise the other side of the conversation, the interlocutor, is completely absent. And I think this whole motif of absence, the absent interlocutor, the absent rhyme, the absent harmony, I think that's the essence of this song. There's a lot of space in it. What do you think of this one?
I absolutely love this song. I partly because I think when you sort of buy a guitar and you're sort of into this sort of stuff, and I learned I Am a Rock was one of the first songs I ever learned. And I just thought, this is great. This is the sort of thing, I'd love to play. I'd love to write something like this. It's really hard to play, though, actually. It's not even that easy to play. He's a good guitarist like that. But yeah, I absolutely love this. I think it's such a great mixture of completely relaxed, don't get me started on the major sevenths. They're everywhere, aren't they, on this album? It's a completely relaxed song about something quite upsetting and dark, but somehow it goes together. No one else would have done, if someone else had said, well, let's write a song about the end of a relationship, they would have gone straight to the A minor. This starts with that D major seventh, and for people who aren't sure what that means, it's just those really relaxing chords. I'm trying to think of a song really that has one which is obvious for everyone, but here we go, Tim. Yeah, give us an example. Why don't we stop fooling ourselves? Yeah, so that's it.
That's it. The game
is
over. Sorry, carry on.
So basically, that's not a normal approach to writing about a breakup of a relationship.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
But somehow he manages to marry together that dark theme with a very light thing, and I think it's to do with acceptance, isn't it? Which is, it is over. This is how it is. It's happening. It's not like he's fighting it even. There's a great line in there, isn't there? The with no laughs left because we laughed them all. I think that's a really clever line. The word "over" is actually. Go on.
What it's just it's the end of a relationship, but also there's an indecisiveness, isn't
Well,
there?
that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
Go
the
on.
word "over" has two sort of meanings here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's over, but then at the end, it has
Mm.
this sort of other meaning, doesn't it? Instead of it's sort of reviewing the
Yeah.
situation kind of thing, which is, you know, I stop and
Mm.
think it over,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
obviously the cricket meaning as well,
So
which is the strongest of all.
let's play an over.
Yeah, the cricket meaning, which is obviously the strongest one of all. But yeah, even the word has that sort of you know that double meaning. I think
Yes.
it's a really nice melody, you know, really well controlled, really well sort of laid out. The story works, and the ending, you know, that sort of surprise ending. And actually, on this album, the way things dip into each other, because when you go from Save the Life of My Child, you're just anticipating that America thing, aren't you? And it's the same with this. At the end of this, Stop and Think It Over. You're actually got, it's like it's a gap between songs, but it's kind of not, is it? Because someone comes in just like when you think it's about to end, and that's the next track. And they are nicely blended without crashing together, these, I think. Because we're at this point, aren't we, in the sort of life cycle here where these kind of relationships split up. But I think, yeah, it's just a great marriage of sort of, you know, that relaxed feel and fairly tense, you know,
Yeah.
lyrics.
That's right. I mean, you're right. They do. It is nicely programmed. All of this, perhaps,
Yeah.
possibly with the exception of "Save the Life of My Child," which is crashes in and crashes out. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a crossfade at the end of that. So I think that's a bit weird. I
Hmm.
feel like they could have a producer could have stepped in at that point. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. At this point, it's much better. Voices of Old People.
Yeah.
Do you what? I mean, what are your thoughts on this one? This is a
I think
sort
it's
of
a sort of it's a mixture of like naivety and bravery, which is
right.
this is an odd thing for them to just stick on the album. I think it's brave in that they've actually given a slot for this on the album at all. I mean, we're talking, you know, it's not long, is it? But it's enough to disrupt the flow. But at the same time, there's a kind of naivety to it, isn't there? Because it's also, oh, wouldn't it be amazing? You know, this sort of let's put some effects in. It's like an example, an extension of that, isn't it? Wouldn't it be great if some old people spoke? Let's write a song about old people. Oh no, let's let them talk. You know, so I think it's kind of it's a bit of a mixture. But I have to say, I have grown to like this the more I've heard it. I think it does work. It's not uninteresting actually to listen to this. I always thought, oh God, it's the old people. You know, it's like you're waiting for old friends to come in, but it's actually okay, and I think it's just the universality of it. They've selected very well these phrases. These bits have been selected well. They're not repetitious in any way. You don't cover the ground. You know, you expect the same stuff. It's not like that. There's sort of movement. You've got a variety in the tones of the voices as well. The sort of emotional resonance is different, and you get that insight. You know, and who doesn't want an insight? You know, into that. You know, I mean, we're all on the treadmill, so. I think it's a brave choice to do, but I don't think ultimately it works well, actually, on the album.
Yeah. Do you think any of those people they interviewed are still around today? I wonder. I've written this is very good for a found sound piece. I mean, you know, Garfunkel's only contribution to this album is this track, right, which is a music concrete track, and I think yeah, you're right. It works surprisingly well. It fits perfectly into the suite. And it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's got a nice blend of sort of comedy. Someone saying, "Oh, I can't get the mucus," you know.
Yeah.
And then it ends with a sort of rather moving comment where someone says, you know, all you need is your own room and your own home or something like that. But you're not even really sure whether that's what's been said. So it's got a nice sort of psychological effect. It's a very nice sort of centerpiece, I think, to the suite. And I think it's very tasteful. But I think perhaps we should move on to Old Friends because that's this is. I feel at this point we're dealing with a slight arch structure in the suite with Voices of Old People as the centre, and then because Old Friends is to me the mood is a bit similar to Overs. It's a sort of slow 6/8 jazzy, you know, seventh chords, major seventh chords, and. I think that, you know, it's sort of course, I mean, the ultimate arch here is the the Bookends theme and
Yeah.
reprise, which literally bookends the suite. And here you've got again this reference to old people sitting on a park bench like bookends. So it's about sort of like parallels here, and of course the ultimate parallel here again is that we're all going to die. So it's got this sort of existential thing. It's also meta, as they say today, because of course, like Simon and Garfunkel are the old friends.
Yes.
So it's quite postmodern in that sense. It's a
Yeah.
self reference. But I just think it's a beautiful tune. This, and I should also wanted to give a shout out to this sort of genius string arrangement that comes in
Yes.
halfway through, which is sort of post romantic, almost modernist. It sounds like Penderecki to me, or Ligeti, or something like that. It really sort of
And it, yeah.
atonal and everything.
And it comes in with quite a force, doesn't it, at the end of this side? Like it hasn't happened anywhere on this album, and suddenly you've got this, punch of strings, haven't you?
That's right.
Right at the end, yeah.
That's right. And again, I suppose it sort of echoes the kind of like the sort of collage effect of the whole suite, actually, which is that you're just putting lots of things together. All suites are sort of a collage. And so it's, again, but each of the elements is quite tastefully chosen, I think, and that shows here. But I think it's a really, really lovely tune, this. And then, of course, it goes into, what do you think of Old Friends?
Well, I just think it's a lovely tune. I mean, to bring the whole thing to an end, it is. But talk about mellow. I mean, this is going back to what we were talking about earlier, the sort of major seventh thing. I mean, just to sort of give you an example, the melody, if you were to sing this straight, would be "Old Friends." That's what it actually is, "Old Friends." But of course, they drop it by a semitone, so it's constantly falling like through the stave. This "Old Friends."
That's right, yeah.
And it's just like the ultimate attack, isn't it? That kind of major seventh. But it works so well with this, doesn't it? Because this is supposed to be, a sort of friendly, nice experience. So the chords really work here. The bookend theme's just brilliant. I think, can you imagine us years from today? And that's Garfunkel coming in at that point, isn't it? After Paul Simon's sung. So you're right. It's this kind of, it's like the other one singing about it. Can you imagine us years from today? It's interesting that, it's terrible. How terribly strange to be 70. It's like a really kind of posh way of saying, isn't it amazing, that we're going to age? And then you've got like 4 years before, I hope I die before I get old. The kind of really rebellious way of saying it. This is like oh no, there won't it be odd? It's a completely different approach, isn't it? There's some really clever kind of key changes in here in the strings as well. They really shift around, don't they, when they get to the strings part of this?
Yeah.
But I think just that the main, melody of that is just fantastic. Yeah, I love that. It's a great idea.
Well,
and I always used to get it confused, Old Friends and Bookends. I always thought they were the sort of same thing. I think they're blended well, but they kind of reflect each other a bit, don't they? They're not completely separate ideas. They do kind of work together in a way that feels like it's one song. Whereas
That's
it's
right,
listed
yes.
as another, isn't it, really?
That's right. There's a lot of doubling here, isn't there? There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
And in fact, those first two chords, Old Friends, that's the double chord, isn't it? And the double friends and the double bookends. It's kind of like unconsciously, it works,
Yes.
quite cleverly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. This is the anti-Who
Yes.
album, isn't it? Never mind celebration of youth. Let's go straight to the end. Let's cut to the chase. And then, of course, we end with the Bookends theme. At the end, which is just Old Friends just floats into the Bookends theme, which again 6/8, same time signature and everything. It's again, I think is it sad or happy? This, I mean, the lyrics are about remembering a better time, aren't they? Yeah. It's someone's on their own, just contemplating. So there's a lack of other instruments. Again, it's a sort of, it's almost an internal monologue, I suppose. Preserve your memories, they're all that's left you. So will we have remembered? I can't work out. Is it ambiguous? Will we have remembered this time well? Or, are they saying that this time is pointless because one day it will have meant nothing? I think it's kind of left open, really.
Yeah, memories are all you're going to have left. That is all you're going to have in the end is memories. I think that overall this side of the album, I think the theme has really been the I mean, it sounds obvious to say, but has inspired the music, really, hasn't it? Which is
Right.
because obviously, the concept of this has to come first. It's no coincidence that they've written a series of tracks which just happen to fall in that order. I mean,
Yeah.
they've plainly been inspired. Paul Simon's been inspired. So I think that sometimes those things kind of, for someone who is an inspired songwriter, those are golden, aren't they? Because when you write about things like Old Friends, things occur to you, don't they? And they become subconscious almost. They just bleed their way into the music without you realizing. I tell you what I really love on this is the way that violin line moves from the end of Old Friends, the violin line that hangs in the air and then it drops down like a semitone or something into Bookends. As such a lovely, it's handled so well, the end of this, because it gets to the fifth, I think, on Old Friends, and it just drops down in. It's so well done. I think that it's just lovely, and it's like a kind of heavenly thing, isn't it? Here we are at the end, but there's nothing to be worried about. It's this isn't bad. This is a good thing, and from a listening point of view, it's just wonderful. Yeah, I love it.
You're right. That's thematically important, isn't it? It's all thematically important. This is very rich, and the string part is written and arranged by a genius. I mean, I'm not completely sure who did it, but yeah, great. All right. Well, look, let's crack on because we haven't got all night. But I mean, I think
not infinite.
Time is not infinite. That's right. So let's go to side 2 without further ado. I've written "Here's Where Dem Singles At." So this is as you said, like the single side or the sort of like the sort of more poppy side, as it were.
And the stuff that was written for the film.
Right, yeah. So we'll come back to that perhaps in a second. Let's just go to "Faking It" first of all, which was indeed a single. Curiously, it's not very single-like. I don't think this one. I don't think this is a great track. This one, it's all right. It's very. We keep talking about Penny Lane and Beatles, Strawberry Fields. I mean, this is Strawberry Fields-like, isn't it? This one. I'm thinking Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane. The production here sounds exactly like the end of Strawberry Fields. I think the strings sort of even sound like a mellotron at certain points, although it might be a Moog, I suppose. I think that my problem with this track is that the harmony again is not so interesting on this one.
No.
It's got a nice moment, but then it da 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 da. Oh no, not really. That bit's nice, and then it uses that as a jumping off point. It uses that as a jumping off point to change key. But I don't think the key change is particularly interesting. This is my very personal opinion, and so I think it doesn't kind of takes the edge off this song a bit for me. But I think that the words again work very well. I mean, I think he's talking about his writer's block here, isn't he? He's talking about like his what they call it, imposter complex or something. Right. Fake it till you make it. It's just I'm still faking it. And I'm not sure really whether I've made it. And he even sort of, the theme is that he sort of imagines what his life would have been like if he'd lived in a different period and done something completely different with his life, right? Got another English reference here. "Good morning, Mr. Leach. Have you had a busy day?" Apparently that was read by John Martin's wife, Beverly Martin. And Mr. Leach is a reference to Donovan.
Oh, you beat me to it. Yeah.
Sorry. So, of course, Donovan is the deus ex machina of all 60s pop, as everybody knows.
He wrote everything.
Yeah. But yeah, so this isn't my favourite track on the album, but I think it works all right, as a sort of like opener, because there's such great stuff coming. You have to know the rest of the album to know that, of course. What are your feelings on this one, Peter?
Well, I mean, first, the difference between vinyl and CD. When you hear the end of Old Friends, the last thing you want to hear a few seconds after the end of that side is this coming in, and on CD you really have to face that, and it doesn't work. Whereas on vinyl you've got the flip, which is there's a sort of finality to that first, the suite. And Old Friends, Bookends Theme, and it actually stops, and you've got a decision to make at that point. On CD it's horrible.
Are you saying that You can go and get a cup of tea and prepare yourself for side two. Is that
For
what you're saying?
Faking It, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it works better on vinyl, this, because of the stillness of the end of the first side. I don't think Faking It's nice to crash in, and it does. CDs, absolutely no soul at all. They'll crash, they'll do whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Spotify's a bit like that as well. It's terrible for just cutting off things. Oh no, don't need that. I'm going straight onto this. It doesn't blend.
Yes.
But anyway, no, I'm not a fan of this song. It's a bit throwaway, and I'm surprised Paul Simon didn't think, yeah, this isn't, it's part of the writer's block thing, I think. Yeah, and to his credit, he's kind of written that into it, isn't he? Which is, what is going on here? I can't make this work. It's got that unnecessary Indian instrument sound at the start. It's like, I don't know why we need that. It's just another sound experiment, I think. It's like a screeching. The guitar riff does actually, the doom 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 diddle doom doom at the start, does remind me of Mrs. Robinson actually a little bit. I wonder whether they kind of, sometimes two songs are started and they sort of end up as two songs. There is a little bit that Mrs. Robinson sort of feel to that sort of punchy blues riff.
It's bluesy.
Yeah, it is blues. Well, like Hazy Shade of Winter is as well. But there is a happy kind of resolution to it. It kind of has that bluesy feel. It's a bit darker, and then it sort of resolves all the time. It's one of the reasons why I don't like this song, actually, is it constantly seems to be turning that corner. Just lean on me. It's got this kind of like, it's like indecisive almost, like it doesn't know where it's going, this song. Like it's patched together. The lyrics and the feel of this song, do they really go together? I mean, it's quite a sort of jubilant sound, isn't it, this? I mean, the chorus, why would you be singing it like that? I feel like, America's a brilliant example of, melody and theme working so well together, sort of heartbreaking sort of feel. But this is like two things that do not work together very well, I don't think. I was going to say with the Mr. Leach, interesting you beat me to that. With Donovan, it's not the first time he's had a go, because I think that it's specifically a reference to Donovan, isn't it? And obviously Dylan was, a target as well, wasn't he? I mean, there's this song, A Simple Desultory Prolific, or whatever it's called, on the second album or something, where he just has a go at Dylan. He just does impressions of him, and like The Boxer is supposed to be about Dylan as well, isn't it? So,
that's on Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, isn't it?
There you go. I never know. The titles of the albums are so like irrelevant to the album. I never know which one's which. I think this is what I was saying earlier. This is one of these songs that really benefits, though, from digital remastering. Because there's one thing about when you listen to these albums, they're a bit muddy in places, and especially Faking It and Save the Life of My Child. They're so busy. What you need is them cleaned up, actually. Because there's a lot going on. The Mr. Leach bit's quite charming in a way, but you need to be able to hear it clearly, and there's a lot going on there, I think. But it does benefit from that sort of modern approach, I think. Technique.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't thought, that's an interesting point about the lyrics and the tune don't actually match. I hadn't thought about that. That is a problem, if you don't always notice these things consciously, but I mean unconsciously, I think you notice it.
When you listen to it next time, if there's a next time, if you listen to it, it really is an odd mix of theme and music. I think it is.
Punky's Dilemma. What are your feelings on this one?
I've just put a really successful study of major seventh chords. This is another one of those, isn't it? It's just he's gone straight for that major seventh chord again.
Yeah.
This is crazy, isn't it? It's just this crazy lyrics. It's a throwaway. It's the kind of song that an artist would quietly leave off an album, actually, I think. It's the kind of thing you'd write and you think, is that good? Is that good enough for the album? It's kind of, because of its sort of simplicity, maybe you might think, that's the kind of thing anyone would write, and it has that sort of lack of oddness about it. There isn't a punch anywhere that you're not expecting. It's actually kind of fairly predictable. However, I'm a real fan. I really like it. It's a nice diversion away from other things as well. A Citizens for Boysenberry Jam fan is a lovely line. Simon loves England as well, doesn't he? Paul Simon loves England. It's sort of picks up all these references from England, doesn't he? And he's got like the English muffin in there. And that's the Cathy song thing, being England, I think 64 or something. He was 63 or something. It was over. It's also got the war in here, isn't it? World War One, I think. To Mary Jane, Best Wishes, Martin. And then it brings it up to date, because you've got this World War One figure, in the frame, and then you've got old Roger Draft Dodger, of course, which is like the Vietnam. It's like a comparison, isn't it, between these two men, I think. But it's done in such a humorous way. Because it doesn't he fall down the stairs or something? There's some clumsy moment, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's what I hear anyway. He's going tiptoeing down the stairs, bloody falls over. It's like we've turned him into a joke, you know.
Yeah.
The thing that really brings this together, though, is just a wonderful moment, which is the, oh, South California.
Yeah.
There he is. Garfunkel's back.
That's right.
Oh, it's just wonderful. I mean, we haven't really spoken about the voices, but what a sweet tone. He's so cute, isn't he, Paul Simon? I mean, it sounds really stupid to say, but he is. When he talks, he sounds so cute and sweet. When he sings, it's like angels.
It's like, especially on this track. I mean, this is supposed to sound angelic, isn't it? Especially as you said, that middle eight.
Yeah.
Oh, South California. Obviously, I sound exactly like him. But yeah, I think you're right. I really, really like this one. Again, I said, like you, full of jazzy sounding seventh chords. I've got noted down here, and glockenspiel, of course, jazzy glockenspiel. And yeah, I think this is a slightly more, a lot of seventh chords, slightly more straightforward chord sequence on this one.
Yeah.
But I think it really works actually, even though it's more conventional. I think it's got a nice shape. That's what I think about it. It's very sort of lazy, languid, sort of soft sounding, isn't it? I mean, it's so twee and soft sounding. This isn't sort of like, because I mean, Hazy Shade of Winter, I almost said White Shade of Pale again. Hazy Shade of Winter is sort of like, you could imagine a heavy metal band doing that one, but this one, definitely not. I wonder whether this is again, a sort of piss take of California. A New York piss take of California. I mean, they're sort of it's satiric. It seems to have something satirical about it.
Yeah,
you know? About like if you're in California, it doesn't matter what you do. You know, like you just relax. You know, and hang about. Yeah. And they've got that. That's determines the whole mood of the track apparently, which programmatically is quite interesting. But yeah, I'm a fan of this one. But
I think its success though is in that it's not setting out to do anything, this song, is it? It's not trying. You couldn't be confused. I mean, it's just silly. So it's not like it's like you said about the sort of early Paul Simon songs. You know, they're very earnest, but they don't always cut across. This is like the opposite, isn't it? Which is really lyrically anything goes with this. He's not setting out to do anything special. It's just that it's a good melody, and you're right. The shape, it's so satisfying, isn't it? So why would you leave it off the album? I suppose I just think sometimes things come simply. This is probably a song that was written very quickly, I think.
Possibly, and perhaps unusually quickly for him, because he writes slow, doesn't he? He wrote slow, I think. He wrote in sections, Paul Simon. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, also very short. All of these songs are very short. I mean, I've mentioned before that I think that sometimes if the songs are really short, it's difficult to get too offended by them, even if they're quite bad. But I mean, but actually, depending on, unless they're all bad, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's it's not a very high risk strategy, this. But I do happen to think that it's actually quite a nice tune.
Yeah. You were saying about him writing in sections. Have you seen Have you seen him on? It might be on the Dick Cavett show or something when he's talking about this a bit further in the future. He's talking about Still Crazy After All These Years. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah,
it's fascinating, isn't it? Because we all know the song, but he hasn't finished writing the song.
That's right, and he almost is like, you feel like he's inviting the viewers to write in. You know,
that's great.
What should I put in the middle eight? You know, answers on the postcard.
But you rarely catch that moment, do you? Where it's like, oh, actually, he doesn't know what he's doing. You only ever hear the full thing. It's really interesting. Yeah.
I like it though. I mean, I think that's probably why he's such a successful songwriter, because you know, he's taking his time. He's not just going, yeah, that'll do. You know, as a lot of people do. You know,
that'll do.
All right. So let's go to Mrs. Robinson then. Now, what do you have on this one?
I used to sing in a duo years and years ago. My son hates it when I say the turn of the century, but that's the best way to describe it. used to sing this in a duo. It's such a lovely song to sing because the blend of those two melodies goes together so well, and they're in unison sometimes. But this song is written in such a way that the third thing we would talk about does work really well with this. Actually, it's the absolute Everly Brothers influence. This is, there's no dominance between these two parts. Most people, I suppose, when you sing the song, you probably sing the Simon part, but it's not hard. It's not hard to learn that other part, actually. It's very easy to sort of carry on, and it's brilliant. Neither dominate. They blend together so well. I mean, this was written for the film, obviously. And I think lyrically, it's a sort of generation divide song here, isn't it? It's sort of advising, like, people, sort of older women. And here we are, in our kind of perfect state as a youth, for this. I have to say, though, I don't know why, but I'm not a big fan of the song. I know you were saying, it's one of the big three. I don't know if it's overkill, but I think it's more to do with it running out of steam, this song, a little bit. And it's possibly because it has no middle eight. I know we've spoken about this before, but it has nowhere else to go, this song, apart from the riff, which sort of sticks it in, between. But I do think before that third verse, it's kind of almost had enough at that point. Some good lyrics in here, every way you look at it, you lose. I love that. It's such a great way to end that line, to go into the last chorus. It sort of crashes out at the end. There's this great chord. I don't know whether... I'm one of those people who loves to hear the end. Like, it's fading out. There's a really unusual chord. Have you ever heard that one?
But it's like a lick, isn't it? Isn't there a lick? A blues lick or something?
Well, they're like in E major or something, and he plays like an E flat or something, quite loud. Just at the end, if you turn it. Yeah, I love all that. I love that little bit.
Isn't it a fifth? He's playing a fifth.
I don't know. Something angular, though, to the chord they're playing. Yeah. It doesn't excite me.
I think they faded him out before he had a chance to do any more damage to the harmony. Yeah.
I think what it is I appreciate the beauty of that introduction, actually, which is it's lovely. When the melody comes in and they're doing the deep bit, I think that's wonderful. I don't think it sustains, though, as a song long enough. And I know it's a popular song and it's the one everyone knows, but I just think it a little bit runs out of steam, this song. That's all I would say about it.
Fair enough. Might be overexposed to it as well. I mean, there's a possibility, because I think it's a really good track. I'm not sure I quite agree with you about the lack of a middle eight, because I think it's so strong, the verse chorus sequence, that you can just keep doing it. It's one of those epic sort of constructions. And I think the lyrics kind of keep it interesting. I think the lyrics keep it interesting, really. But
I don't think it needs a middle eight. It doesn't need it.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's such a sort of well-known song and so sort of consolidated that perhaps it's not... Yeah. But I like listening to it as part of this album, I have to say. It's also probably the longest song on the album or something. That's probably what you're referring to as well. I'm not sure about that, but I think it probably goes on longer than some of the others.
Yeah.
So perhaps it outstays its welcome a bit. It's got modulation. It starts in F sharp and then moves to A for the chorus. I think that's kind of interesting because the song was obviously written in two parts and then they just stuck them together. But I think they work quite well. And there's a lyrical difference between the chorus and the verse. Like the verse is more satirical and the chorus is more romantic, or a bit more magnanimous, I suppose, towards the person that they're talking about, Mrs. Robinson. Yeah. But I think that's quite an interesting thing. I've noted down another Beatles reference, Cuckoo Choo.
Oh, yeah.
I Am the Walrus. But what is it about? What is it about? 'Cause it's not about the film, is it? And I read somewhere that it was originally written about Eleanor Roosevelt. So they're singing about "Here's to you, Mrs. Roosevelt," maybe, which might make more sense. Actually, up to and including the references to sex. But I don't think it's about the film. So I think it's not quite clear what this song is about. I think it's a sort of because of an impromptu construction after the film was completed, I suspect.
Yeah, it's a bit like Snatch. I mean, if you don't know what the song's about, in a way it doesn't matter because you know that there's just a figure that they're speaking to, isn't there? There's this Mrs. Robinson and general advice thrown at her, which is a bit arty, isn't it? It's not sort of concrete, any of this stuff. It all just is a bit silly anyway. So there's not any particular sort of point to it, I don't think.
No. If you hadn't seen the film, I wonder whether you would sort of think, "What the hell's this song about?" But anyway, what about the other big single, as I've called it, "Whiter Shade of Winter"? No, "Hazy Shade of Winter." I mean, I think this is quite a good song, very very singlish, isn't it? I didn't realise it came out so early. This one. It came out in late '66. This one, they had to wait a long time before people put it on an album. They recorded it in the Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme sessions. Very epic. I think it's got a good title. Sometimes titles matter. I think it's almost like if you listen to like Oasis, I think we're good at like turning a good title into a song. You forget sometimes how important a good title can be when it comes to sort of putting a song together. But I think for me, this is slightly less harmonically interesting than the other songs on the album. It's sort of Latin inspired. I mean, the guitar is almost playing flamenco chords here, I think. And I've never found flamenco chords particularly interesting, although that's a very ignorant thing to say because flamenco chords are actually incredibly complicated. So to say that they're not very interesting is meaningless. But what they normally do is that descending minor keys, of course, and like that descending, B minor, A, G, F sharp. They do that sort of thing a lot in Spanish and Latin music, and I get a bit bored of it. As I said before, it could almost be a hard rock song. It's got a very bracing rhythm, isn't it? But I think unlike a sort of like later 80s rock song would be arranged in a very sort of full way. This is quite a sparse arrangement, and that one of the nice things about 60s albums, I think, as opposed to like 70s albums, for example, or 80s albums even is that they're sort of experimenting with the arrangements, aren't they? And a lot of them are quite sparse. If you think about Beach Boys, I mean, Beach Boys sometimes just used to have like them all barbershop singing, and that was like the rhythm. There's no drums. Imagine people at a disco dancing to a barbershop. So I think that that's noticeable about this track, that there's more space in the arrangement, which I quite like. But I think that, as I say, it's not the most harmonically interesting track. It's also, I think you can tell it's from, as I said, slightly earlier period, because I think the lyrics are less sophisticated than some of the other lyrics. It's more like from their Wordsworthian, sub-Wordsworthian period, so references to nature and things. And I find it all a bit sort of callow, really. What do you think on this track?
Well, I mean, firstly, as a kid, I always got this confused with California Dreaming. And I don't know why anyone would, but there's something about it that just used to confuse me. I always got confused between the two. Not that they sound particularly similar, but there's some sort of vibe about them.
Well, again, there's those flamenco chords, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe it's the descending thing.
Yeah, minor key.
Yeah, I think what's happened here, because I'm not a big fan of this song. I'm not, in the same way that I'm not a big fan of Mrs. Robinson, really, but I think I don't like this as much as Mrs. Robinson, even. I think they've come up with a really good rock riff. My God, is this a rock? I mean, this is like, you could really rock this up, couldn't you? This is classic rock. And so they've sort of come up with that, and they've built it around that. I do think, it's I don't think it suits Paul Simon, actually, this. I feel like he's struggling to actually do this song. There's something about his voice which we're suddenly missing. I'll talk about in a second. I think the best thing about it, though, is the middle eight, which is Seasons Change with the Scenery. That's actually really nice, that bit. And the way that goes along, and then we're back into the chorus. I don't think the chorus is really interesting at all. Really, it's just a resolution, isn't it, for them? I think what it is, this is the point I want to make about the song, which is that this really illustrates what's happening to Simon and Garfunkel in '68, because what they're being forced into here, and it's all bands had to go through this, and they're on the folk rock side of things, so maybe it's not as extreme, but they are being forced into a rockier world, and so we start to miss this is like, oh my God, how far have we come? Because the Parsley Sage, and all that stuff, the older stuff, that you really start to miss it at this point, I think. We're losing the Simon and Garfunkel that we knew. The pure angelic thing is sort of gone, leaves that are green turn to brown. I mean, it's just incredible. It's lovely, but I'm losing what I like about them, I think. They've got such sweet voices, and they're struggling to fit the new mould, I think. That's why I don't think this suits Paul Simon at all. It really doesn't. I just think it's pushing things forward, and they don't really have haven't wrestled control over this, and I don't think it suits them actually. But things are moving forward. It's the way it was, but I'm not really a fan of the song.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say it's a bad song, would you? I mean, don't you think? I mean, it's not.
I wouldn't choose to listen to it.
Fair enough. I don't know. I wonder why they didn't put "You Don't Know Where Your Interest Lies" on the album, because it's a bit more recent, and that would have been like that's a lovely track, and in a way sort of more interesting. It's kind of forgotten Simon and Garfunkel track, but maybe they wanted to just. There was a habit in America of putting the singles on the albums, basically, wasn't there?
You know what? Though, when you say, do you think it's a good song, or do you think it's a bad song? I think it is possible. It's like it's the ABBA effect, which is Dancing Queen. Like, I mean, everyone knows that song, and technically, I suppose, it's a good song. It's lasted, people love it, But would you ever replay that song? I mean, I think sometimes there is a case for yes, it's a good song, but I don't want to listen to it.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, but that's because Dancing Queen, you hear it like once a week. It's like Hotel California, isn't it, by the Eagles? Anyone, if it's a workman outside with his radio on, you'll hear it every half an hour or something. You probably don't. You get tired of it, really. But I do think Dancing Queen is a good track. But probably one of the best ABBA tracks. But it's as I say, it's sort of overexposed, perhaps.
Yeah.
At the Zoo, where are you on this one? The final track.
Well, I mean, I think it starts really nicely. I love that jangling. Is it like a metal? Some sort of jangling metal in it. I think that's a really inspired idea. It works really well. It's mysterious. You don't know where it's going. It only really goes up to, and the animals will love it if you do. And then I'm sort of re-engaged. I think the actual the beat part of it, I don't really like as much. I don't know. It's not the lyrics necessarily that put me off. I just think that there's certain parts of it I like. I like the quiet bits, essentially.
Right.
And then I get re-engaged with it. Something tells me it's all happening at the zoo. I love all those bits. The actual song, though, I think it's a bit of a waste of space. I'm not quite sure how this ends the album. It's just sort of serves as a reminder to me of what I liked about their voices. It's sort of tails off at the end, doesn't it? At the zoo. The zoo. Like, there's no purpose to this side as such, isn't it? It's not heading anywhere. These are just songs. But I think I like the quiet parts of this, but I don't. I think it's a bit throwaway, the rest of it.
It was a single, inexplicably.
Yeah, and America wasn't.
Yeah, weird that. Although it's more danceable, I suppose, this one, relatively. But yeah, I think I agree with you on this one. It's a funny sort of echo of Faking It, actually. It's like, again, it's a sort of the lyrics and the music are slightly out of sync, and it's not really clear what it's about. And also, it's not the most harmonically interesting track, I think. Although I do think the lyrics rescue it a little bit because on this one, because I think that they're quite fun. Is it an allegory? Or it's a sort of undefinable allegory, I think.
Yeah.
But I do like some of the jokes in it. I think it's a sort of good-hearted end to the album, I suppose. As you said, this is the single, so this is sort of like the individual track side, isn't it? I like the joke where he explains how to get to the zoo. And then he says it's good being there, but he doesn't really explain why.
And I've always thought giraffes are insincere.
Well, absolutely, of course. All right, very good. So that's been a little run through. I mean, do you want to just I suppose we've sort of mentioned that this is a kind of existential album. Do you want to have a quick read of All the World's a Stage? Have you got it?
So, yeah.
Can you bring it up?
None of these Shakespeare monologues obviously have like titles, but they are a bit like hymns. They're given their sort of first line, really.
Yeah.
And obviously Yeah, Jaques is a melancholic character who lives in the woods. I was going to say the Forest of Arden, but I think that's the right play, Forest of Arden. And he lives there, and they kind of discover him, and he's very melancholy, and he sort of interjects. I think it's like they used to have these moments where they had to change the scenery, or had to do something backstage, and they'd give someone a monologue, just so they could do it. Now, I'm not great at reading these things, but I'll have a go. This is what he says. He says, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school, and then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good cape and lined, with eyes severe and beer of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with the spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice, turning again towards childish trebles, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange eventful history, is second childhood, mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans tastes, sans everything." Which is, it's just like the other characters
Lovely.
don't know what to say after that.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, so that's lovely. Existential monologue for an existential album about
Yes.
imperfect or failed ideals. Above all the those of the hippies in the '60s. But it's a beautiful ride. This album, and my favourite Simon and Garfunkel, I would think, as you said, mainly for the first side, but I think it's sort of the ambience kind of persists onto the second side.
They're unusual, aren't they? There's nothing that sounds like them. I know you could say that about any band, but they are at an angle to everything else
They're
at
at
that
an angle.
time. In a way, that's kind of why they're slightly forgotten, I think. They are a bit forgotten.
Good, yes, a band at an angle. There we are. That's our headline.
A bangle.
A bang. Actually, the Bangles did "Whiter Shade of Pale," I think, as a cover.
Hazy Shade of Winter.
Sorry, Hazy Shade of Winter.
And that wasn't a joke, by the way, listeners.
Yeah, it wasn't. Okay, I think we better stop before I get any more confused.
Yeah.
So, thanks for listening to these two old friends discussing this
Yeah.
album. Please let us know your thoughts. We're very interested to hear, and what you think of this record or any other record by Simon and Garfunkel, since we're on the subject. And we will see you. Remember to like and subscribe, and if you haven't done already, if you're engaged by what we're discussing. If not, don't bother. And we'll see you on the next episode. So, ta-ra, Peter.
Bye for now.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you soon. Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.